So what we're going to cover in this video is under the Home tab, we have this font section here, and that's where we're going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and just put some data here, sticking with our fruit theme. And I can, first of all, use this here, and this is going to change the font. Now I'm just going to select a single cell, and you see we have all of these different options of all these different fonts, which is great. Now, the neat thing about it, we don't have to select each individual font and then see how it looks. We can just hover here, and as long as we can view our cell in the background, we can see how that'll change. I'm going to go ahead and select some random font here. And if I want to change the font of these two, then I could do it as well. But usually it's best just to select all the cells that you want to change. And then we can go ahead and hover over here and find something that we like. And it's going to change every single one. Now we can also change the font size by using this. It's the same concept. We can hover, move down. We also have the option to actually type something in here. If I wanted to go something less than 8, I could do, let's go real small and try 5. It's going to let me do that. No, I mean, that's ridiculous, but it you can go lower than 5. I think there is some limit, I think much past 5, it's not going to let you do it, but you don't have to stick to the sizes that they have in here. If you wanted to do something slightly in between these numbers, you could, but these are just kind of the standard sizes that are used. Now, something else that we can do is we can use these quick buttons here, and that's just going to add one more step up in this line. Every time I click this button here with the up, it's going to increase the font size by 1, and then not actually one number, but kind of one setting in the default settings. And I can decrease that font size as well. So these are just quick buttons. Instead of using this drop down every time, we can just kind of mess around with these. Now, we always have the option to bold, italicize, or underline our font. And again, it's real simple. We just select the data that we want to format, and I can select this, and that. And then, we can up or change it however we want. If we don't want underline, there's actually a drop down here for double underline if you ever want to use that for some reason. But in general, just bold, italicize, and underline. Now there are some quick keys to this, which I use quite a bit. To bold something, we can use Control B. Italicized is Control I. So I can go ahead and hit Control I, and that's going to italicize it. And then underline is Control U. So same concept there. Just saves you some time instead of having to come up here every single time. Now we can change the background color of our fonts as well. I'm going to select a bigger block here. You see I already have a blue color selected here. I can hover and see what types of colors I want to see. I'm just going to go ahead and use one of my recent colors and select that. Oh, that's really bright. It's going to change the color of all of these cells that I selected, or I can do individual cells. The other thing that we can do is change the font's color. Same concept here. Hover, I'm going to go ahead and choose white just because it stands out a little more. And one last thing, with both font color and background color, we have this more color option. So if I go there, I just kind of have some more options from what they provide there. I can also use this light spectrum here and choose an exact color I want, change the brightness, the darkness of it, and then I can also use an exact text code in here if I have it. That just means you get an exact color that you want, regardless of what you see on your screen. This just ensures that you're going to have the exact color. If you recognize a certain hex code and you want a certain color of green, then you put it in here and you're going to get that exact color. But for the most part, it works just selecting the colors that they have in here. Now the last thing, I kind of skipped over this, but slightly more complicated, we can add borders to each one of these cells, and you can see here it's just kind of like a blob. It just sort of looks like these cells are floating out there a little bit. Now if we add borders, it's really going to help this. So I'm going to go ahead and select, first let me make this blue, I don't want that green. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and select these green cells here, and now I can use this and add all types of borders. So if I want to add a bottom border, what's that? What's that going to do is just add a bottom border here. You just see that little thin black line there. Now if I wanted, I think it would look nice to kind of box this off and have a line there. I can again select all 3 of these and add a right border, and then that's going to box it off. Now what if I wanted kind of boxes in here? Well, I can go through here and do all borders, and what that is going to do is actually surround each one of these cells that I selected with lines. That just sort of separates them out, makes it look a little bit cleaner, a little bit nicer and easier on the eye. So it can be a little bit confusing sometimes where the border is going to be. So I would suggest just going into this tool and kind of messing around with it a little bit until you get a good idea of which borders will go where and how it's going to affect. Just remember, everything's in relation to what you have selected. So if I just select a single cell, an all-around border is just going to go around all this. But if I select all of these cells and I do an all-around border, it's just going to go around just the widest part of what you have selected. Now the last thing that we have here, which is kind of neat, we can draw borders if we want. So instead of creating a border, I can first draw it and then release. And all I did there was click and drag and then move this around. And I'm going to go ahead and do it right here. And now we have a nice border there. There we go. And then I can actually draw a grid as well. Instead, if I just, instead of wanting the entire box, I can get each individual box by doing the same thing, dragging and dropping, and that's going to make each one of these have a border. And that, to me, just looks a lot better than it did before. So, we want to utilize borders, especially, if we're going to present this data to someone, or, just for our own uses as well. We can also erase a border if we want. If I wanted to get rid of all of these borders here, I can click and drag and kind of start deleting them. So we have a lot of options in here. Again, we can change the color of the lines as well as the line style, how thick we want it, if we wanted a dotted line or whatever. We also have this more borders option, which gives us the same options. It just sort of works a little bit differently. It just allows us to kind of add, remove different borders, and then we click OK, and then it adds it there. So the borders are, it's useful to use them. Again, just makes the data look a lot better. As with everything in here, we want to be formatting our data so we can see it. We would never want to use colors like I am here, but I guess it just depends on what you're doing. But it's really nice to format your data just so it pops a little bit more, and it's just easier for everyone to read.